I'm Catherine Skinner, the Pima County Transportation Director.
I'm Paul Casertano with Pima County Transportation.
I'm Natalie Shep. I'm with Pima County Department of Environmental Quality.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nalo. I'm with the Town of Sarita Public Works Director.
Nathan Barrett, Town of Sahuarita. Jeremy Moore, ADOT.
Good morning, Adam Ledford, PAG.
Good morning, Dan Grossman, Town of Marana.
Somebody back in? All right, anybody online want to do introductions? Yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Jamie Brown with PAG. Sorry I couldn't be there in person today.
Chris?
Chris Stevie, landscape architect at the University of Arizona.
Mariatti?
Mariate Echeverri with Kimley Horn.
Jennifer?
Jennifer Hobart, Planning Section Manager with the ADOT Multimodal Planning Division.
Anybody else they missed? Hearing none, move on to item number 2, in-kind reporting. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable on the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. We did pass around the sign-in sheet, so please make sure you take a moment, sign it, and get it back to us. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 3, approval of the July 24, 2025 meeting summary. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. We got a motion. Do we have a second? We got a second. Thank you.
Second.
Have a second. Any other questions, discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? I'm sorry. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out too that Jason Bahi has joined us.
Jason, you there?
I am. Thank you. Sorry for being late.
Thank you, Jason. All right, moving on to item number 4, review and recommend approval of the 2025 FY 2029 PAG Transportation Improvement Program, TIP ID number 2025.020. Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I gave you a mouthful on that title. And my apologies. Ordinarily, we would have a handout. We had a little bit of a version control, and I had a printer issue this morning, but we can pull up anything on screen if anybody wants to review this in more detail. This will look pretty similar every year. The FTA releases FTA apportionments for 5307, 5337, 5339. We come together as a transit working group after receiving submissions from each individual jurisdiction. We hold a working group meeting where we do a programming exercise to get those funds in and make sure that it maintains financial constraint within the TIP. And so this is no different. In fact, this looks very similar to something we talked about just a couple of months ago that was delayed for the air quality conformity grace lapse period and a couple of other things. So this is just the fiscal 2025 apportionments that we'll be programming into fiscal 2026. That's per ADOT guidance to program them into the year of expenditure. In effect, because we run these forward in the TIP development cycle, effectively, more than anything, we adjust these in any particular program year. So that's what we're looking at today. When I brought the last one to you, there was a little bit of concern that we were asking for a full-on recommendation for approval. We're comfortable, as it pleases this body, with a conditional approval or provisional approval or a recommendation for approval, just knowing that we won't be taking any action at the regional council level that wouldn't be conditional until we get that air quality conformity in. We have an agenda item reserved for a bit later where I can explain kind of the timeline of events and where we anticipate being able to actually finalize these amendments within the TIP. But I'm ready for any other questions that you might have on this particular amendment today.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Anybody online? Any questions? All right, hearing none, this is an action item.
I'll move approval of the proposed TIP amendment 2025.020. Assuming we get air conformity, that'll be when it's finalized.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Jason, I second.
Thank you, Jason. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moving on to item number 5. Update on the Delaware Ride Microtransit Service Area Analysis. Hannah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. So we brought updates and presentations to this committee throughout the development process, and of course, work closely with the Technical Advisory Committee for this study, but we are nearing the completion of the study and working on the details of the final report. So today, Mariate Echeverry from Kimley Horn is here to provide details and present on the project, including the findings from the analysis. And as a reminder to the committee, this project looks at evaluating existing dial-a-ride services and the feasibility of implementing on-demand microtransit services. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Echeverry for her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Good morning. So let me try my slides here. Okay. As Hannah said, I'm Mariate Echeverry. I have been before you a couple of times. And I think sadly, this is going to be the last one. We just want to give you a little bit of a summary of what has happened with the project. And as Hannah mentioned, the main findings, the feasibility of implementing microtransit, and then a couple of items that you had not seen before, that are the Title VI and the air quality analysis, along with the recommendations. And okay, there. There is a little bit of a lag on my internet, so I apologize for that. Just wanted to give you a summary of what happened with the public involvement. This project had extensive public involvement since inception. We had, in particular, 2 phases. The first phase happened last year around November, and that extended to the end of December with the survey that was out, and then the phase 2 was in March, and also with a survey that extended about 30 days. So the main events that happened during these 2 phases were the technical meetings, so presentations to the TPC, presentations to the technical committee. We had several pop-up events at different places in the county. The idea with our public engagement was to try to have a variety of events so we could capture different demographics and different community needs and different types of inputs. We also had pop-up events at the transit centers. We were there several times during the 2 phases, and we received really great input from the riders. We had many focus groups. We talked to a number of agencies and organizations and nonprofits that currently work with the community, that gave us great information about the needs and expectations and the things that they were looking forward more with regards to the microtransit study. And then we have 2 surveys, one at the beginning to collect input, and then one at the end to show the recommendations and also gather some input from the riders. As we were conducting all this public engagement, we began with the data collection. We began developing the opportunity zones, as we called the areas where microtransit could operate. We had mentioned before what we used to do these simulations, but I just want to remind you a little bit of what elements we take into consideration. So on one side, we look at the supply, which is what the organization is going to provide. And then we look at the potential demand. So what the ridership is going to be, we look at all the demographics and travel demand, the population, the activity centers. And then in designing the service, we look at distance to get to your stops, how we meet the demand, and other type of criteria. Then to design the microtransit zones, we look at different service design parameters. First, we determine what we call is the weekday service, and that means Monday to Friday, and then the extended service, which includes weekends. And we determine this based on the potential demand and how we think that microtransit is going to be used. So to determine the zones, these were very important considerations. However, all the other criteria are very similar for both of them. So on the travel rules, the microtransit goes anywhere to anywhere, and we also go outside of the zones to points of interest, because that was something that we heard over and over from the stakeholders that was very important. On the booking model, on the weekday, the target wait time is 20-25 minutes, while the extended is 10 to 15, and the maximum wait time on the weekday is 60 minutes, and the extended is 30 minutes. So as you can see, the extended has a little bit more service than the weekday. The bus stop model is the curb to curb. It was also important, and we heard this from the stakeholders, to continue providing kind of the curb to curb service because of the lack of sidewalks and safe places to get to your stop, especially when you get away from the core. Like the city is very well served, but when you move away, it's a little bit more challenging. And then the fleet, we are looking at minivans. This is very common with the microtransit service on service hours on the weekdays, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And on the extended, the service during the weekdays goes until 8 p.m. and then Saturdays and Sundays. So this is this map shows you where all the microtransit zones landed. Again, the orange areas are the weekday service, and the green areas are the extended service zones. And some of these areas already have service direct ride in particular. For instance, Marana, the Sahuarita Green Valley also has service, and Oro Valley, and there are some other. And last time when we met in June, we show you a detail of all the zones. This time I'm just going to show you kind of the summary to remind everybody where we landed. So we look at different criteria to determine productivity, and also to determine what the fleet size is going to be and what the annual ridership is going to be. So here you can see kind of a summary of the zones that are going to perform better, and the ones that go kind of to the end of the line. And the idea is to have, if the region decides to implement these services, is to have a range of implementation. So you go from the short term to the long term based on how all of these numbers fall in place. Then we took all this data and we did a Title VI and equity analysis. And we have also done areas of persistent poverty analysis and look at some additional demographics like seniors and population over 65. On the Title VI and equity analysis, we took into consideration the Title VI policy that is in place with RTA, which establishes that any change that is higher than 25% in revenue hours or miles require Title VI analysis. And because we are proposing all these changes, everything was over the 25%. So the analysis was triggered. And then RTA uses the Title VI disparity and disproportionate impact that was established by Suntran, which is 20% of a cumulative threshold. And when we did the analysis, it was determined that there's no really impact in the community. There are some just localized impacts, but because microtransit is very redundant, and there is also fixed route that is serving big areas of the region, and some express routes that are serving also the region, this mitigate any hardship that may happen in any particular community. So that's good news. Then we performed an air quality analysis. We looked at vehicle miles traveled and that were reduced and added. So we look at both what is reduced from eliminating some individual trips on private vehicles, and then added miles that can come from any of these services. We look at the level of pollutants as a result of this VMT analysis, and we look at the emissions avoided and added. And then with all of these, there was the cost-benefit analysis. And this slide summarizes the findings. So adding the microtransit service and expanding the fixed route buses increases the CO2 emissions in 10 zones of the 13 and decreases the CO2 emissions in 3 zones. And you can see that here, the decreased emissions are in negatives, which is the parentheses. So those are the Oro Valley, Sahuarita, and Marana. And then the rest increase the emissions. And so over a period of time of 10 plus years, there is a cost of $78,000. This is the reason for this, and I want to just to make a little parenthesis here, is because microtransit is a very effective way of providing transit service, but also the microtransit brings more trips into the equation because they are shorter trips that you do in the zone. So those shorter trips and kind of the increment of those trips is what increases the cost over time. And then we looked at how this could be implemented in the region. So here you can see what is recommended for the near term, what is recommended for the medium term, and what is recommended for the long term. And when we look at, again, at the 10 plus years, there is an increase in funding required for the implementation of microtransit that is of $10 million. And this is only for the operating costs. We did also the calculations for the capital side, and this is only taking into consideration the minivans that are required for service, and this amounts to $2.2 million in capital costs. And then another task that we had as part of the study was to kind of look at the different things that the agencies are going to need to be taken into consideration if you'll decide to implement microtransit. So the first thing is the service model. Currently, there are two that are the more frequent. One is the turnkey operations, where the agency contracts out the service and there is a provider that does everything for the agency. In some cases, they also bring the vehicles, so you can organize that in different ways. And then the software as a service, where the agency purchases the software, and then if the agency already operates transit, they can just use the software to organize and plan all the trips. Those two models can be mix and match, and some agencies do that. Some agencies purchase the vehicles and just allocate the operations, and some agencies do other different things. For the RTA, we recommend that the agency look at the turnkey service, just because that's what is currently in place, and it will require really much more additional effort to bring it in-house, and it will require more staff, and we don't think that it makes sense at this point to do that. On the technology side, it's very important to provide a technology that can integrate trips and that is easy to use by the customers and by the agencies. And on the agency side, it's very important that the agency can get all the data that requires to plan service and to produce adjustments to the service. And on the customer side, it's very important that the trips integrate. So Sun Shuttle has express routes, has fixed route. If microtransit is implemented, ideally this app will have everything coordinated and together in one app. And it's also very important to take into consideration unbanked individuals and people that have no access to technology. So still, the call centers are very important because some people are going to need to continue calling to make their reservations and to pay for their trips. On the fare side, we since the fares are free currently, if the fares are implemented again, then there needs to be analysis to determine how that is going to affect. Ideally, if the fares are implemented, they should be integrated with the service that is provided, so it doesn't become a burden on the persons that are using different pieces of the transit service. In looking at the microtransit services that are successful across the nation, one element that has been very important is to have adequate marketing and outreach, and to do educational efforts across the region, because this is different from what transit usually does. So it's very important to inform the people so there is no fear in using this new service. Of course, agency coordination and partnerships. So coordinating with Suntran, coordinating with Oro Valley, and coordinating with ADOT and all the agencies that are stakeholders in the region. On the funding side, and I'm sure that you are all aware of this, the RTA Next is going to be in the ballot next May. And if RTA is not available, then there needs to be some reconsideration about how this is provided, because that funding source will not be available. And finally, on this kind of implementation scale, we recommend, and this is something that also many agencies do, is to implement first a pilot project. So take one of those zones, one or two, and implement them and see how they are received, how they operate, how it works with the rest of the region. Currently, there is a microtransit zone in the Greater Tucson is managed by Suntran and is very successful. So some people that use that are probably aware of the benefits of microtransit, but a pilot is always good to kind of adjust and see what you need to do with your service in the future. And this is kind of the implementation roadmap. So we put here kind of the most important steps to implement microtransit, and so there is a planning, and this feasibility study is part of that planning effort. Then there is the design, where we talk about what the agency needs to determine what service model is going to be used, the first structure, begin doing kind of preparing all the guidance and documents for the public to use. Then there is all the procurement side, if this is going to be how the vehicles are going to be procured, if they're going to be procured through the state contract, if drivers need to be hired, and kind of all those other logistics steps. And then on operations, identify who's going to provide the service, who does kind of all the pre and post trip processes and forms, where the vehicles are going to be parked, driver handbook, etc., everything that goes linked to operations. This process takes about 10 months. Of course, many of these tasks need to be overlapped to get to that point, but it's something that can be implemented relatively easily, and also can be implemented relatively easily. And then the next steps, as Hannah said, we are in the final steps. The PAG is reviewing the final report, and then that is going to be consolidated in a nice graphic document, and that will be the end of it. And that's it. I open the floor for questions.
Brent? Any questions from the committee?
I know that it was a lot.
Thank you. So this was funded with carbon reduction program money, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I believe at the time we had talked about the fact that this does not reduce carbon since it's more trips, and I think you just demonstrated that. So I guess who is the ridership? Like, what is the I imagine it's disabled elderly folks, but what is the makeup of the ridership, and what is the purpose of microtransit? Who is it serving?
Well, microtransit can serve anyone.
So as an able-bodied person, I could call up the existing Sun van and get a ride from my door and go somewhere else, and I could do that for free?
Is there a fee for this service?
Well, your fares are free right now. So
the door-to-door service at this moment, right now.
Yeah.
So what is the point of this study if it already exists?
What? No, that doesn't exist. You don't have.
We have microtransit service through Sunvan at the moment. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a very small area.
Okay, so this is a much broader.
This is an extended area.
Yeah.
So the point was to see area-wise
that don't have
outside of the city. I'm still wondering, though, we should be asking ourselves who it does serve. It could be something that we are actually increasing emissions. I mean, as someone who works for the Clean Air Program, my main thing is to try to get people to get out of their cars to reduce air pollution. When we support microtransit just for the sake of microtransit, then we are actively choosing to increase emissions in our region, when some of those folks could actually just be getting on a bus if they're able-bodied. So to me, it does seem relevant to be looking at who it actually serves and what the purpose of it is. If it serves those who cannot make it to a bus stop or don't have bus service, that's one thing. I think we should be looking at that. But I'm not sure if it's a good use of taxpayer dollars to be providing door-to-door service for anybody and everybody, regardless of, there's just no stipulation. It seems like it's not a great use of money. And it's certainly not saving on a carbon emission. So, but that's I'd like to just say that for the record.
Thank you, Natalie. We also have Hands up by Davidi.
I've got a similar question about the clientele it serves, and I'm wondering, is this a service model that would work for daily commuters? I'm
Yes.
thinking back to my days when I was doing the 421 up I-19 every day. That's a 20-mile commute, and I don't know. It seems a little bit more awkward for a daily commuter. So I'm just wondering how that would work for that sort of clientele.
I believe it serves the general public. Mary, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Okay. Can I don't know if someone else is raising their hands or not. So the service is for the general public. So anyone can use the service. One of the issues, like when you go, as I mentioned during my presentation, when you look at the city itself, you have places to walk. There is a little, it's a good serve area. When you begin walking or moving in the outskirts, and when you get to the more suburban and rural areas, there are no places to walk. There is no way anyone can make it to the bus stop. We heard, for instance, from Picture Rocks and Vail that there is a tremendous need for them to have a way to move. There are people there that cannot make their trips to do anything. They are just captive in their homes because they cannot walk to and also you have a climate that is not conducive to be walking at noon to go to your doctor's appointment. So you have to provide the door-to-door service. So there are people that currently cannot make their trips. There is no service in areas like Picture Rocks and Vail to bring these people and these members of your community to health appointments, to jobs, to education. And they certainly cannot walk along the highways. So microtransit, when you compare microtransit to fixed route has a purpose, and it works really well in you have a really robust fixed route system, and David can probably talk about it, that serves the community, but fixed route is limited. Fixed route doesn't get to difficult places because the benefit of fixed route is to stay on a corridor, right? So microtransit is very flexible, and it allows to serve more people that are currently unserved. And they can be, they are general public. They can be anyone. It can be a kid that needs to go to school. When we talk to Vail and when we talk to the school district, they told us that there is a tremendous need to provide transportation for kids that they don't have access to. They only can get only to school, but sometimes it's difficult to do anything else because there is no other transportation available for them. So there is a need for it, and it's not, microtransit doesn't work well everywhere, like on the city itself, because of the density and because of the usage. Microtransit would be very expensive, but in the areas outside of the city, can definitely be a good way to provide a better service for your community members.
I'm overthinking the details here. Maybe it's still too early in the study for this, but again, I'm thinking about the commuter, right? Would a commuter have to call and make a reservation every day? Would there be a way for them to, like have a standing pickup every day? How easy would it be to cancel if the commuter wakes up and says, you know what, I'm sick today, I'm not going into the office, I don't need my microtransit today? I'm just thinking about how convenient the fixed route was for me as a commuter. I could just drive to the bus stop, to the park and ride. And if I didn't need it that day, the bus driver wasn't going to miss me. He wasn't going to be inconvenienced by coming to the bus stop and I wasn't there. And I didn't have to pre-plan it, for example. I didn't have to set up a pickup. Yeah. It was just there when I needed it. So I'm just, like I said, I'm probably overthinking this or thinking through details that are not yet covered in this study.
Yeah. So microtransit can be set up in any way you want. So the agency determines if the agency is going to allow subscriptions. And many agencies do. But think of microtransit. Microtransit is similar to Uber and Lyft. It's just that it's public transportation. You grab your app, you get your ride, and then 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, your bus is there, your van is there, because this is provided with vans. So if your car breaks and you don't have a way to get to your fixed route, microtransit, you can, very quickly get your ride reserved and be picked and taken to the station. Many agencies, as I said, they do subscription, and because they are, they want to serve these regular trips well, and then they will have their policies to determine how to cancel the subscriptions. But because you do everything in an app, it's much easier, because you probably just toggle a button and that's it.
I'm your hand.
Hey, Jose,
Any
this is
questions?
Sam. I've got a question,
Yes, go ahead, Sam.
or maybe more of a clarification. I know Natalie was referencing the city's on-demand program currently. I just wanted to note that it is only in 2 small areas. On-demand zone 1 is on the west side from roughly Grant to downtown and Oracle to Silverbell, and then the other on-demand zone is from Park to Country Club and Broadway down to Ajo. And the idea when those were set up is, because those were established before we went fare free, is that anywhere in those on-demand zones, you could travel without having to pay a fare, and they were serviced by the Sunvan vehicles. Now that's still an option, but it's just fare free everywhere. And they are serviced by Sunvan. That doesn't mean that any able-bodied person can ride Sunvan for free. You have to be in the on-demand zone to be able to take advantage of that. So I just wanted to provide that clarification for everyone. That's all. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions? Natalie?
So just follow up that. Thank you for that clarification, Sam. So it seems to me as we move forward with trying to plan for microtransit that it makes more sense to really be looking outside of the Suntrans service area, because or maybe modify the riders so that we are serving those who can't get to a bus stop. It did look like your zones were everywhere, regardless of Suntrans service. And so it does seem to me that, considering microtransit in a Suntrans service area seems to be a bit redundant.
Thanks. Sam, you have another question?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that. Thanks, Natalie. I agree wholeheartedly that I think where the best place that this microtransit study could be implemented is in the areas where we're currently providing, or where RTA is currently providing Sun Shuttle routes, and maybe using this to somehow, optimize that. Because it's my understanding that ridership is really low on Sun Shuttle, and as we're, possibly going to be reimagining transit for the future with RTA Next, there might be an opportunity to utilize some of what came from this study in the outlying areas to provide some of those microtransit areas. I agree. It seems very redundant to do this in the central core where we have a lot of coverage and a lot of frequency on the fixed route.
Yeah, it will not be appropriate for the core. Yes. So yeah, and the zones are outside of the Suntran service area.
Are there any questions further? Anybody online? Not quiet here, guys. Well, if there's no other questions, it's an information item only. So if there's no other questions, comments, move on to item number 6.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marietta. Number 6, PAG annual bicycle and pedestrian count. Nicholas. Where are you at? There you go.
All right. Good morning, TPC. My name is Nico Geraldo. I'm a transportation planner here with PAG. And today I'll give you a summary of the bike count program and the results from this year. All right, so first, a little bit of history about the program. PAG first started the bike count in 2008. And in 2010, the program was expanded to include pedestrians. By 2015, we launched the Online Data Explorer, which is an interactive map on our website that lets the public review results from past years. By 2019, we had counted over 15,000 cyclists, and this year marked the 17th iteration of the program. So just a quick glance at the results from this year. We counted over 15,000 cyclists and pedestrians, which is the most we've ever counted. The gender breakdown of cyclists in the region is 70% male and 30% female, which does represent an increased rate of female ridership. Both helmet usage and youth ridership are on the rise, while riding on the sidewalk and riding against the flow of traffic are declining. So across the board, all positive trends. A little bit of an overview of our methodology is that we begin by working with local jurisdictions to select the sites that we're going to count at. Then we recruit volunteers to go out to these sites with tally sheets and train them how to use it. And once they're all recruited and trained, all that's left is to execute during the count period. This is typically a month-long period. This year, it took place over the month of April. And we ask them to go out during peak travel hours. So this is weekdays from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., as well as Saturday and Sunday mornings. Here you see a screenshot from the Online Data Explorer where the size and color of the circles corresponds to the volume of cyclists and pedestrians at those sites. The site selection process begins every year with 38 annually monitored core sites. These are sites that we plan to return to every year as long as the program is running. PAG staff also reviewed sites that we visited in past years and decided to revisit 39 of them. So we sent this preliminary list of 77 sites to local jurisdictions, and after they reviewed it, they nominated 9 new sites to be added, giving us a total of 86 count sites, which was ambitious because once volunteers signed up for all the sites, we ended up collecting data at 59 of them. As for the recruitment and training, recruitment begins a month prior. So we started recruiting at the beginning of March in anticipation of the April count. Training consisted of a PowerPoint presentation that was recorded where we teach them how to use this tally sheet that you see here. Well, they'll put down a tally for every cyclist and pedestrian and additional tallies for whether they're female, youth, wearing a helmet, so on. And recruitment is a continual effort. Even once the count period begins, we're still sending out flyers to cycling clubs, advocacy groups, anyone who we think would be interested in participating. And one thing to note about the methodology that changed this year was that this was the first time the count was conducted during the spring, where it would typically be conducted during the fall. But as you'll see, we don't believe the change in the count period affected data collection. So diving into the findings, we counted over 15,000 active transportation users, which is the highest volume in program history, and a 23% increase compared to the previous count. Helmet usage rose to 74%, suggesting that cyclists are becoming more mindful of personal safety. Both sidewalk riding and riding against traffic are on the decline, suggesting improvements in rider behavior and better access to appropriate facilities. The 30% female ridership share reflects a trend toward gender parity. And youth ridership is also increasing, which may reflect more family-friendly routes or improved infrastructure near schools. So based on the data that was collected, we can see that walking and biking continues to play a vital role in the region's transportation network. Results show that bike riders are increasingly diverse and exhibiting safer behavior. High volume areas continue to cluster around dense land uses and active transportation infrastructure. So areas like the university, downtown, anywhere along the bike loop are going to remain cycling and pedestrian hotspots. And continual monitoring will allow us to measure the impact that network investments have on user behavior. And for future counts, resuming in 2026, we will go back to the fall count period, but we're confident that the data that we collected this year will make a reliable addition to the long-term data set. So if you have any questions at this time, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you, Nicholas. Any questions from the committee? Paul?
Given that this is the first time that you did a spring count and your numbers were up 23%, do you have any plans to do another spring count? Maybe not this round, but next rounds?
The count period changed because of staffing changes here at PAG, so we had to shuffle it around a bit, but we do plan to go back to the fall count. I guess we'll see truly how much it impacted the data collection once we return to the fall count period. But when we compared the weather and the precipitation from October and April, there's no notable differences, so we're confident that the data is similar enough.
Yeah, very good. One additional question. Your trend changes, is that year over year, or are you looking at multiple years of helmet use, for example? Are you going from the previous year helmet use to the current year, or are you looking at the whole duration and what your rolling average might be?
We just looked at the trend over the last 4 or 5 years there.
Right.
But yeah, I could pull up more data to see the long-term trend.
Just curious. Thanks. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Nicholas, were most of these riders in the morning or in the afternoon? Do you know the time frame? Was it like a count taken in the morning or in the afternoon?
I think it was pretty similar. I don't have a comparison on hand for the volume, but the weekday riders were mostly commuters, so similar crowds.
Now, most of these counts were taken by when bicycles using bike facilities, correct? Or
some of them were taken along places like the River Loop, bike boulevards, but others were taken places like Speedway, where it's just a painted line on the side of the road. So we capture all types of cycling infrastructure.
Thank you. Last, did you take any counts up in Oro Valley? I noticed in the map they were all in the central part. Maybe you should have zoomed out.
The screenshot.
I know we have bicycles up there.
The screenshot was zoomed in a bit just because just for clarity, but yeah, you can use the online data explorer and see the counts that we did up in Oro Valley. They are considerably lower volume compared to the university where I zoomed in there.
Understood.
But yeah, we have sites up there.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I also just wanted to thank everybody here, part of the TPC. We did get volunteers from every one of our jurisdiction partners. And so it was really nice to go through that list and see folks from all your staffs participating. And I'm sure you guys like it when people help, but it really does show that everybody contributed. And we wanted to thank you for that.
Okay. Well, there's no other questions. This is an information item. Let's move on to item number 7, Transportation Improvement Program. The TIP. Jamie.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about some TIP-related updates. Next slide, please. And the next one too, please. So we'll be covering a few items. We'll be talking about the timing of the next TIP development process, the status of TIP amendments, and an update on the TIP rollover process. I'll start with the timing of the next TIP development process. And the purpose of this first bullet is really to share our thoughts with you about the process, especially given the situation with RTA Next. We know that the TIP development process not only requires a lot of staff time, but also a lot of your time. And we want to make sure that we have a conversation before we start a process to make sure we're maximizing everyone's time. And just as a reminder, I'll talk about the TIP process, provide some context before we invite your thoughts. So next slide, please. So as many of you are aware, the TIP covers a 5-year period. It's a federally required short-range plan that includes the region's prioritized list of projects and programs for transportation. It's required to be updated at least every 4 years. For our process, we typically begin in August and conclude the following May. And I'm going to read these steps because they're really important to the conversation. These are just kind of an aggregate of the steps, but you can see we've got scoping and establishing financial constraint targets is one of the first steps. Then we work with our committees to draft project lists. Once the project lists are approved, even in draft form, several technical processes can commence, including the travel demand modeling, Title VI analysis, GIS mapping, air quality interagency consultation and modeling, performance report development, etc. We also update the document, all the chapters and appendices around this time based on what's in the project list. And we also are at a point in the process once we've have the draft project list and we started these technical processes that we can start advertising for the public involvement, including open houses, a 30-day comment period, and then finally the public hearing at the regional council meeting. And then the last phase, of course, is finalizing the document and regional council approval. Next slide, please. So this is just a way of depicting some of those steps graphically. You can see again, we typically start in August and we move through the months. Through May, we have various committee meetings along the way, developing the project list, approving the draft project list. And also we ask for your assistance on reviewing the draft document, attending public open houses, reviewing the final draft. So there's a lot of committee interaction along the way. Next slide, please. So we've been thinking internally about timing, and that's why we wanted to have this conversation with the TPC. This is not an action item today, it's just really more of a discussion. So although the TIP development process typically starts in August, the next 20-year RTA plan is being prepared for voter consideration. Therefore, we will not be able to confirm project and program funding until after the RTA election. The outcome of the election will impact several separate TIP project lists, including the RTA roadway project list, the RTA transit project list, and the ADOT major project list, and perhaps others. Approval of the full draft project list is a key critical path activity for the TIP development process, as I had mentioned earlier. And what you see on your screen are snapshots of various project lists that ultimately come together into a master project draft project list. Next slide, please. Again, some more considerations about timing. If the TIP project list needs to change based on the election outcome, then committees and staff will need to repeat steps in the TIP development process. Some steps, not all steps. If the process is started after a March 2026 RTA election, the goal would be to complete the process by the following May, if not earlier. So in that case, if it were May, it would be a FY28 through FY2032 TIP. And in the meantime, we would need to amend the 25 through 29 TIP, especially for fiscal year 27. We've also been talking, and you maybe, if you're listening to RTA board meetings and TMC meetings, you're hearing discussion about returning to an annual TIP development cycle. Also would be interested to hear your thoughts about that, but that would provide more opportunities for tracking progress and making adjustments. It would be especially important with voter approval of RTA next. And there may be other considerations we haven't thought of, but we think that there would be an expectation to start a process around this time, a TIP development process, if we were to start. So that's why we wanted to have a discussion with you at this meeting. We can also discuss this at the next meeting and future meetings. But want to pause here and open it up for any thoughts, comments, concerns from TPC members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, Jamie, could you, or someone from PAG, can you go back to that last slide with yeah, can you just leave it there as we're talking?
Catherine?
Sure. So a lot to think about. I mean, going back to an annual process, I mean, I think that's a good idea, and it, obviously has been repeated at most of these committee meetings in the last month. I think there's broader considerations there. When we did it annually, we had a more established TIP subcommittee that did the bulk of the work. And I think we'd need to look at how that gets layered in, just in terms of distributing the efforts among staff in our various organizations that have more bandwidth. I know not everybody, Jose, usually come to all of these. Stan, you'd probably be stuck coming to all of these, but I think it would distribute the effort a bit. I'll also add, it's difficult to articulate right now because the RTA Next has been moving so much. And so the latest iteration with the way it completes the RTA 1 projects, I'm trying to balance how that works with what is programmed in the TIP right now. And there's some conflicting points. And so I do think that means we should start this effort sooner, at least like a major amendment process to maybe, or drafting something so that we're ready when we need to hit go with that amendment at the end of this fiscal year.
All right.
So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll just chime in and say I'm in favor of returning to the 1-year TIP cycle. I know that's going to be a heavier lift for PAG staff. I was there. But I think it allows us to be more nimble and more agile in moving forward. So I see that as a very positive development.
Thank you, Nathan.
Hey, Jose, I also just want to throw my support back into the annual TIP cycle.
Thank you, Sam. And look here, well, nobody else. I'll chime in. I agree with all of you guys. I think we should return back to the annual TIP development. I think that went away when a lot of the funds started going into the RTA. As a matter of fact, the PAG TIP subcommittee kind of went away as well too. We only met like once or twice a year. And I remember back before we used to meet pretty much once a month. So I agree with the committee that we should return to the annual TIP development cycle. And with that, Jamie,
Yeah.
you got your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't sure if others had comments, but if we're wrapping this piece up, I do appreciate the feedback. And I think, Ms. Skinner, you had mentioned that this is, or someone else had mentioned this is a lot to sort of absorb. And also, I think it will be important to see sort of what is in the final draft that we should see soon for RTA Next, and maybe have more conversations as we get more clarity about how that's going to impact the TIP development process. So completely understand that. Heard that, we might want to start sooner rather than later in terms of if there's going to be maybe not a full TIP development cycle in the near term, but maybe a major amendment to start that process sooner, and hearing support as well, again, for the annual, reverting back to the annual TIP development cycle. And just quick comment, Nathan, it's great to see you at TPC. And if those of you here don't know, Nathan Barrett was a PAG employee who was the lead on the TIP development process for many years. So many thanks to him.
Thank you. Jason, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the process that would be required for the amendments for 25 through 29, and then changing that to 2832.
Yes, I can jump in, and Adam too, please do chime in. But in terms of an amendment, because of the amount of funding and the types of adjustments that we can foresee these would be formal amendments, most likely that would go through the full committee process, starting with TPC or even Transit Working Group and working their way up through Management Committee review and Regional Council. And so for a full TIP development process, I think earlier in the presentation, I covered some of those steps. There's a lot more that we do in terms of the full process, in terms of public involvement, in terms of some of the technical analyses. That's also when we update the document itself. So a lot more effort goes into a full TIP development process than an amendment, but amendment does involve going through the committee process for formal approval. I'll pause there. Adam, anything I missed or you want to add?
Mr. Chair, I think, it's important with any amendments, especially formal amendments. And when we're thinking about RTA next and adding new projects, these are absolutely formal amendments. And so we really need to look at what's our drop dead date for when they need to be in the TIP before we need to start executing these projects. So those period one, when we're looking at assigning money for design, for roadway, for example, transit expenditures, things like that. There's a lot that we're going to have to really hone in on what that date is, where it needs to drop into the TIP. And that means we need to work backwards from how long ADOT needs to process that. When's the last regional council meeting that we have available before we put that in there, RTA board meeting, and then work backward from there to hit the TPC and the management committees. From that point, knowing that that's generally, it can be a month or more, and it can be up to 2 months for that process, not including the ADOT processing part, then I think it's very smart and very sane to look at how many actual months and how many actual weeks do we have from, let's say, next Tuesday when we have a plan on paper and ready to go to ballot, and then how many weeks do we have to meet as a TIP subcommittee and make sure that we're looking at all these fine-comb details. I think in a world where we still do have a lot of question marks, I think I'll be looking for, as the staff lead for the TIP subcommittee, I'll be looking for input from everybody who is on the TIP subcommittee. I want to make this as collaborative a process as possible. We're very committed to that. And so right now, your feedback is invaluable. So please let me know, even in advance of me reaching out. I'd love to hear all your thoughts.
Thank you, Amy. Melanie?
We're still in a holding pattern with the conformity, right? Can you explain how that plays into all of this?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got kind of a whole timeline and update for that. If it's okay with you, I'll just hold for any other questions as it relates to the TIP development process, and then I can walk everybody through the whole amendment timeline.
With that said, anybody questions, comments on the TIP? Adam?
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So we have gotten a number of questions about the intersection of the air quality conformity lapse grace period and what that means as far as our ability to program changes into the TIP currently. So just the background, in January, we did enter an air quality lapse grace period. At that point, any amendments that ADOT considered to be formal amendments were rejected, and we were told that only administrative corrections by both PAG and ADOT's definition could be submitted. In July, we learned, in addition, from ADOT that due to the beginning of a new fiscal year, state fiscal year, PAG's section of the STIP was pending approval until the lapse grace period was lifted. And now this meant that no adjustments, administrative or formal, could be submitted for approval at the local or the state level. So we were waiting for the RMAP. On August 6th, the RMAP and the corresponding air quality conformity materials were submitted to FHWA. In that request for air quality conformity, we also asked for specific language that the lapse grace period had been lifted. I know those logically seem like they're the same thing, but they're really two processes: air quality conformity and then the release of the lapse grace period. And that's the piece that ADOT needs to move forward. ADOT has been really great in this process. Rather than rejecting the addition of the STIP for PAG's portion, they just didn't finish processing it, so that reduces the turnaround time into a number of days instead of a number of weeks. So our understanding is that we should receive the air quality conformity determination any day now. The timeframe that we were given was within 2 weeks. So if you count back from August 6th, we really are anticipating this any day. Upon providing evidence to ADOT that the lapse grace period has been lifted, they can finish that approval process for our portion of the STIP, which again should be a short process, days, not weeks. And at that time, we're back in business. As far as next steps go, the sequencing of amendments in our system, because we do have a backlog now, both formal and administrative corrections. I know that y'all are hotly anticipating getting those back into the TIP. But the sequence is very important because older amendments, if processed out of sequence, have the ability to overwrite newer amendments. And when we're looking at about 6 months or 7 months worth of backlog, that's going to be a little bit of a challenging process. So we've talked a lot with the folks at the MPD division of ADOT, and what we're going to do to get it right on the first pass, I'm basically going to lock myself into a room. As soon as we know that we have the green light to go forward, I'm going to lock myself in a room, potentially a padded room, I'll let you know, and get everything wired up and get our complete and full TIP document at our local level ready to go so that there's no issues when we hand that off to ADOT. And then rather than submitting and having a sequence and a timing for each of these individual amendments, we're going to submit the entirety of the project list that is contained and defined as 25 through 29 TIP back to ADOT and use that as a full body of an admin request. And so what that's going to let us do is just synchronize between the two. The additional ancillary benefit is that any mistakes that would only be caught by going line by line, item by item, those also have the opportunity to be reconciled as a Scrivener's error. So we're excited about this approach. Our planning team at the NPD also believes that this is the best way to kind of minimize human error and just get it right in one shot. And it thrills me to say that we're potentially in a situation where this is going to happen in a number of business days rather than counting this by months. I fully recognize that I have sat here and told you that before, but with the best of assurances and the most complete information that we have currently, that's where we're at the timeline. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Any questions for Adam? Natalie?
Just to follow up, what's the process for the conformity determination for RTA projects?
Conformity determination for.
Do you have to do a full conformity analysis for that, for the RTA, or is that embedded within the RMAP analysis?
That should be embedded with our.
It doesn't have to be done separately.
No, it's not. It's not an independent process. And you know, there is a piece of that for the full TIP development cycle, and probably Jamie would be better to speak to that than I am. But yeah, in this case, we're already covered.
Any other questions? Catherine?
I just have a question. Will our Valencia Raise grant be in that group that you're figuring out? Because I know that the original response had been, this is not an administrative amendment, and it hasn't gone through as a formal amendment. So I don't know where it is in this.
Did it make it to the regional council for approval?
No, because it was submitted and it was deemed originally as an administrative by staff, and then ADOT. I don't know. You can explain.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Ms. Skinner, I'd be happy to kind of provide some clarity on that. PAG, a number of years ago, is operating upon a different set of amendment policies and procedures with the idea that our process through the committee process and some of the determinations are a little bit more rigorous than what ADOT considers to be an administrative versus a formal. However, in one of the cases, as it relates to federal funds, PAC's position has always been for fund types that we don't administer and we don't have the authority to administer, we treat those as an administrative because it's not the regional council's assigned task to accept or reject funding that's been granted to a jurisdiction for a particular project. However, federal funds are classified as a formal amendment at the ADOT level. And so we submitted it, you know, we really rushed. We tried to get it before the cutoff period for the lapse grace period. Due to several reasons, that did not happen. And so at the state level, it was a formal, and that's just what it was. So FHWA and FTA jointly came back and said, no, you are prohibited at the state level from making these formal changes. At this point, once that lapse grace period is finished, we're submitting it just like we would any other federally funded, federal fund type, and expect it to go through the process there. But yeah, it's often a sticking point. It's confusing. I hope that I did it justice even in that explanation, but I have to go back and compare the two different sets of policies every time. No, absolutely. I recognize that you're eager to get this amendment moved forward.
Well, just for clarification, so is it federally funded TIP amendment? It's got to go, it's a formal amendment then?
According to oversimplifying it, yeah, generally when federal funds are applied in a new fashion, so like raise grants would be a great example, that's classified as a formal amendment, and so it needs to go through their full process.
You might not have this information, but how many TIP amendments are on hold?
Well, ballpark, I'm going to say about 10.
10, all right.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want to. Thank you, Adam. Any other questions? Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I'm envisioning you trapped in your padded room, I'm wondering if you will accept meals and how you may deal with quality control to make sure that the way you're wiring everything together is the most current and accurate. Because even with the raise grant, we're now discussing whether there needs to be a set aside for right-of-way phase within the TIP amendment itself. So there's many moving parts that are continuing to move, and I want to make sure that we don't get you to correct everything just to have to correct it again.
Absolutely.
So if there's an opportunity to do like a rollover style meeting or whatever with the project partners, I would strongly encourage you, liaison with us just to make sure, hey, this is what we have for Pima counties for TIP amendments, the sequencing and how I've cleaned everything up. Does that look correct? And then we can kind of just verify that with you through a live meeting of sorts.
I think that's a great idea, Paul. I'm very open to that. Would be happy to schedule a meeting with Pima County for sure, because you have some very big fish that need to be put back into the pond. But yeah, for any jurisdictions, happy to coordinate that. And we'll most certainly send out the full draft project list prior to submitting it to ADOT.
All right, thank you, Adam. Jamie, you have anything else for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Adam, do you have any other updates? Were you going to talk about the rollover process, or are you done?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jamie. Just one side note, at this point, we've completed the rollover amendment meetings for the purposes of shifting RTA, TPT funds and HERF regional funds forward into fiscal 26. Those draft project lists are out into the jurisdictions for their review. I think I asked for them by Thursday, end of day. We absolutely understand this is a very busy week. It is for us as well. So if you need more time, just please reach out to me. But otherwise, that will be bundled and ready to go in the processing of the backlog. And that's it at this point.
All right, thank you, Adam. Jamie, anything else? Is that it?
No,
right,
that's all. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, guys, let's move on. Let's see, I lost my train. Okay, number 8, regional transportation revenues update. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TPC. As you know, fiscal year 2025 concluded on June 30th. Today's report will provide a year-end overview of the revenue performance for fiscal year 2025 with reference to the tables and figures provided in the Regional Transportation Revenues Report. So if you turn to Table 1, in fiscal year 2025, PAC has collected about $33.3 million in regional HERF funds, while STBG apportionment for the fiscal year was $21 million. In Table 3 and Figure 1, in FY 2025, more than $192 million in HERF and vehicle license tax was collected across the region. As I mentioned, PAC collected about $33 million of that, while the remaining amount was distributed to member jurisdictions. Regional HERF revenues show approximately 3% increase compared to the last fiscal year and an 11% increase compared to the 5 years average. Table 4 shows HERF 12.6% in detail. In fiscal year 25, we collected about $33.3 million, which is more than 17% over the ADOT official forecast. Please note that reporting of actuals was delayed in November and December of fiscal year 24, which affect the year-to-year comparison. Table 5 shows HERF 2.6% with stronger than expected collections totaling over $7.5 million in fiscal year 25. And with Table 6, in fiscal year 25, PAG had over $110 million in an account. Most of the dollars are spoken for. Please note that the June balance includes the treasurer's interest from the 13th reporting month. In Table 7, we look at the city and town HERF distributions year to date. Table 8 shows the HERF 12.6% and 2.6% we have already seen. We also have Pima County HERF and Pima County vehicle license tax, the portion set aside for transportation use only. And Table 9 has the previous 5 years and lets you see how much HERF your city and town received, while Table 10 shows a gallon of gas sold in Pima County through various fiscal year. Keep in mind that these amounts shown are for the same year-to-date period, so this would be at the end of each fiscal year shown. The region typically sees about 13% share of the statewide gasoline sales. In fiscal year 2025, we were just under 13% for the fiscal year. And Table 11, nearly $125 million has been collected in TPT in fiscal year 25, trending closely to the adopted budget while showing a small increase from the last fiscal year. In summary, fiscal year 2025 HERF and vehicle license tax performed strongly, with revenue exceeding forecast and last fiscal year's revenue, while TPT performed well and aligned closely with the adopted budget. As this is a year-end report, we would like to take this opportunity for the committee members to provide feedback and changes you would like to see in the regional transportation revenues report moving forward. Please let either Jamie, Adam, James, or me know if you have any feedback. We are always looking for ways to present this information in the most meaningful way to the committee. And that concludes my update, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an informational item. Any questions, comments? Let's move on to item number 9, adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we get a second? Any more comment, questions? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. We are officially adjourned. Thank you.